Welcome to another edition of One More Light with me, VAL KLEINHANS, where we break the stigma when it comes to mental health because we like talking to mental health experts, people who have their own mental health struggles. We just like the conversation to be continued. And that's another thing that we're doing today. We're talking with licensed psychologists specializing in stress management, anger, depression, and anxiety, Dr. Natasha Manning-Gibbs today. I'm so thrilled that she's here because she's going to have all the tips for us, and I can't wait. Thank you so much for being here, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
And what made you want to study psychology to begin with?
Mm. So I always share with everyone that I was a teenage mom,
Mm,
and based on my experience being a teenage mom, I knew that I wanted to go into a field where I could help people, especially people that are, counted out by society. And so that experience is really what catapulted me into the field. I was one of those kids that grew up not knowing what I wanted to do, and I was actually fascinated by peers that would say, yeah, I want to be a vet. I want to be this. I want to be that. I had no idea until I had that experience. That experience, I just turned it into, me entering the field of psychology.
okay, so maybe you were seeing just in your own environment that there were some mental health struggles going on, and you were like, I want to figure out what I can do to solve this or help in some way because this is becoming everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. It was a lot of stress that I was dealing with. You can just imagine trying to graduate from high school, but then having a
Yeah.
child to raise at the same time. It was a lot. Yeah. So definitely what I was dealing with emotionally at the time definitely, made me say in college when I had to declare my major, I want to go into a field where I can help people not only, overcome feeling judged, but overcome, what that situation can trigger, which is stress, sometimes depression, anxiety. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, what did you have as a resource, or where did you turn when you had tough moments at that time?
My family was very instrumental in helping me not only to graduate from high school, but helped me to get through college and the rest of my studies. So I really leaned into my social support. My circle of not only family, but also friends is what helped me really get through that challenging time.
Yeah, so it takes a community and it takes continual conversation. Does that help you maybe keep stress at a minimum as well, just by being social?
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things I've been sharing a lot with clients recently, I've been just having them reflect on the past 3 years. At the beginning of the
Mm,
pandemic, you remember when we were supposed to be socially distancing, and people were cooped up in their homes and not really interacting in the way that they did prior to the pandemic. And so
mhm.
I have people reflect on that time because it really shows that we're social beings. We're hardwired to want to engage with others. And so it's really important that we tap into that when we're feeling stressed, depressed, and down. It can be easy when we're dealing with those conditions in particular to want to isolate and withdraw, but we're social beings, so it's really important that we stay socially connected.
Yeah. So the focus on stress management came from, your struggles when you were a little younger and just kind of getting yourself together still. And you see that there's a need for this. At what point do you decide, okay, there needs to be something out there that gives people a roadmap as to how to manage the stress? And I want to be one of the people that sort of writes the book, so to speak.
Yeah, so definitely my experience being a teenage mom contributed to me really wanting to focus in on this topic. But I had an experience, I work in a prison during the day. So, in addition to having a private practice, I work in a prison, a juvenile male facility here in New Jersey. And I had an experience that really made me say, I want to start teaching people via social media how to manage their stress. And the incident that happened about 4 years ago in the institution, it was very traumatic. There was an
Mm,
inmate seriously assaulted. And I remember there being an officer who later on told me, I just went home that night after seeing firsthand what happened in that traumatic situation. I'm just going to go home and try to sleep it off. And I just had this moment where I was like, wait a second. No, that is not
Mm-mm.
anything that you should lean into. Yeah, you want to go home and get a good night's rest, but what you experienced was so stressful, so traumatic that it's important that you lean into other things, including possibly a mental health professional. So that experience really shook me to my core and really made me say, I need to start giving this information away, not only in the institution to officers that work there and staff, but I also wanted to, again, get on social media and just give this information away that has been helping my clients in private practice for over a decade.
Okay. So does stress have to really be like that traumatic and at that level for you to you use those skills as to how to manage it?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no, so it doesn't have to be at that, high level. It doesn't have to be that intense. It doesn't have to be trauma that really pushes us into managing our stress. Because stress can range from something as significant as that situation, or it can be something like you're commuting home from work and you hit a
Yeah.
traffic jam. That's stressful. Stress is any external circumstance that triggers some distress in us, right?
Mm.
So again, it could be traffic, it could be an annoying coworker. For parents, it could be, oh my goodness, I'm running late to get the kids from school, the kids are crabby. So it's an external situation or a circumstance that triggers distress and discomfort in us.
Oh, so where did you learn the best ways to manage stress?
Well, through CBT, right? So cognitive behavioral therapy is the type of therapy that I practice with all of my clients and even in the prison. And I'm telling you, CBT is very effective because I always say to my clients that it's simple. Like you're really
Mm.
helping people to, as far as the cognitive piece of CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, you're challenging them to check their thoughts. I have this catchphrase that I use in my work with clients. I'm like, listen, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself, right?
Hmm.
Comes from some song back in the day. But if you're not checking your negative thoughts, the thoughts that are triggering stress and maintaining it, you're going to stay in that emotional state for a long period of time. And then the B in CBT stands for behavioral. And the behavioral piece is getting people to look at what they're doing or what they're not doing and how that's contributing to stress. So if you're not calling your friends, going back to the social piece, you're not engaging with people, you're isolating, withdrawing, we know that's a behavior that's going to trigger depression, stress, and even sometimes anxiety. So
Mm.
CBT is really what taught me, about the impact of stress on us, and more importantly, as a professional, gave me the tools that can help clients to overcome that emotional state.
Yeah, I'm still working on the B part of the CBT because I am doing everything I can to like learn how to regulate emotion. And it
Mm,
started with mindfulness. I was reading into that and I did an outpatient program that had a heavy focus on mindfulness specifically. And I was like, oh, it just felt like this key that unlocked so many things. It's like if I can look at this world as just something to observe and let it go by and understand that I don't have to react to every single thing and practice that actively, then maybe I'll do better at just regulating my emotion and therefore regulating stress. Do you think there's any truth to that?
it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And one of the things that I like to, teach people is that, say, for instance, deep breathing, that's a
Mm.
mindfulness technique. It's grounded in research. There's a biological component to deep breathing that helps us to feel less stress, that helps to emotionally regulate us. And, the way I explain it is that we have like these two almond sized structures in our brain called the amygdala. And we need our amygdala, right? If a bear breaks into my office right now, I want my
Yeah.
amygdala to be turned on and keep me safe, right? But the problem with the amygdala is that oftentimes people, it's switching on for them when they're stressed and
Mm.
it's not turning off. And so deep breathing, what we know through research is that it slows down the amygdala and it slows down another part of the brain that's responsible for triggering cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So when you're tapping into these mindfulness techniques, It's not just like, I had somebody say to me one time, oh, that's that woo woo stuff. No,
Mm,
stuff is grounded in research. It's
mm,
effective, it really works. So I'm glad that you had that experience. And that's usually what happens for folks. They're dealing with things in an unhealthy way, and then they get exposed to something such as, grounding techniques or mindfulness, and they experience the impact. They experience how it makes them feel. And so these things are sometimes what you have to experience to really get how they work and how effective they can be.
yeah, much healthier than just bottling it all up and letting it explode one day, which I was notorious for. And that's something I'm like constantly working on, but it's better. It's a better way to regulate that and keep that in check. What are some of your favorite tips that you like to give anybody really when it comes to regulating stress or regulating anger, anything like that?
Absolutely. So I have been telling my clients more recently, do a mind, body, and soul check in on a daily basis.
Mm,
Because what I see is that people oftentimes they let their stress build up and they feel like, oh, I'm just going to rebound on my next vacation, or I'm going
yeah.
to go out with the girls like 6, 7 weeks from now, sometime in the distant future, and I'm going to be fine. No, if we're not regulating our stress on a regular basis, ideally a daily basis, it's going to ravage our bodies. So, with the mind, body, and soul check in, it's very simple. Just pick a time during the course of the day. Sometimes I say, do it on your lunch break. You know what time you're going to usually take your lunch break during the week. If it's 12
Mhm.
o'clock, okay, I'm going to take my lunch break. But before I do, let me take 2 minutes to check in with my mind, my body, and my spirit. Where's
Mm.
my mind at right now? Am I just allowing a bunch of negative thoughts to just kind of bounce around in my head and have me all tense and irritable and reactive? If that's the case, during this check in with yourself, you can tap into some techniques that help to reset your thought process. With the body, check in. All right, I'm about to have lunch right now. Am I making healthy choices? Am I just about to order something, that's like processed food, something that's not going to help my body to produce the hormone, or I'm sorry, the neurotransmitter serotonin,
Mm.
which is connected to, depression and anxiety. Am I going to eat salmon? Am I going to eat something rich in amino acids? You want to, be mindful of what you're putting in your body. Did I drink enough water today? Have I exercised? So that's the body check in. And then the soul or the spirit is, have I tapped into something that makes me feel alive?
Mm.
What have I plugged into today? And it can be something simple. For me, as I'm commuting to work sometimes in the morning, I love listening to a good podcast, right? Or it can be a good playlist. Or
Mm.
it can be, hey, I'm going to call this friend on my way home from work, and I know we're just going to have a great belly laugh together, right? So it doesn't have to be, again, the grand vacation. It doesn't have to be going out, to happy hour every day. It can be these little things, again, that help to recharge you essentially. So mind, body, and spirit check-in on a daily basis is what I want to encourage people to do.
Absolutely. And I gotta know what is on a psychologist's playlist when you got the jams going. I gotta know what is on that playlist.
Well, I am a beehiver, so it's a lot of Beyonce.
Yes. Yes. A lot of Renaissance. Yes.
Yes, a lot of Beyonce. But some days, like I just put it on a great gospel playlist earlier today. I
Mm.
grew up in the church, and there's something about tapping into, more spiritual music. I love that. But yeah, usually Beyonce is my go-to.
Same. No, there's a reason why we love her independent vibe. There's a reason why we look to her as a strong woman because she just
Yeah,
exudes that. And those lyrics really do speak to our spirit. They
they
do.
do. They do. They're very uplifting. She's gotten me through some challenging times. Yes, I love her.
Mm. So there's a lot of talk about how necessary it is to instill, those mental health coping mechanisms in young adults or children, because we truly just haven't talked about it on a large scale, or at least mainstream until now. I feel like it's only now, or within the last few years, that we've just talked about it on a much larger scale. And I know you do give back. You mentioned this earlier that you are a supervisor at the mental health unit at
Mhm.
the Juvenile Justice Commission's New Jersey Training School for Boys. Why do you think it is so important to check in with our youth, especially, and have these conversations?
They are Gen Zers, people between the ages of 13 and 23 right now are
Mm.
reporting the highest rates of stress, the highest rates. The American Psychological Association does an annual study. It's called Stress in America. And I challenge people just to either go to apa.org and read up on this research or just do a Google search on it, it'll pop up. But more recently, the past 3 years, the research has been very consistent in revealing that out of all the generations, Gen Zers are the most affected by the pandemic.
Mm.
So, for that reason, part of my mission on social media is to really not only share stress management techniques with people in general, but I'm really trying to target Gen Zers because of what the research is indicating, right?
So what's on their mind when they're coming to you and they're talking with you? What are some of the stressors for them?
Some of the main stressors, believe it or not, is they're stressed about money,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Very,
Millennial here. Yeah.
yes. I think we're in close second, right, to Gen
Right,
Zers.
right. Yeah.
Concerned. One study done back in early 2021, when the war started in Ukraine, they were
Mm.
reporting that they were concerned about global uncertainty as well, right? And I think that still continues to be a concern among most people, but especially Gen Zers.
Mm.
And so those are like the top two stressors that I'm remembering from the research study. But yeah, they're stressed about various things, relationships. We know that the New York Times just put out a great article talking about the various stressors that they're experiencing as a result of just really being addicted to TikTok and Instagram. And a lot of girls in particular are reporting that they're, dealing with body image issues as a result of that. So it varies, as far as the stressors for that generation. But those are the main ones that are coming up for them right now.
Yeah, that especially using social media as a platform to kind of present the opposite so that it can help anybody younger feel better. Man, I'm such a
Mhm.
big believer in that because I do see it. I do see younger people, I'm at the age where my friends have kids now and they're sort of within that age range. And that's one of the things they talk about is how focused they are on TikTok and Instagram and how they, are focused on using filters or is this the right thing to post? Is this not the right thing to post? And I'm like, oh, please just go follow Lizzo, go follow Beyonce, go follow people like them, like for real, because I'm like their message is so much better than the
Yeah.
majority of what's out there. So, when you're posting on social media and when you're sharing your tips, do you have that in mind? Like, okay, I want to put out there the right kind of vibe and the best way to reach them in the most healthy way.
Absolutely. My page, one of the things that's my mission is just to bring positivity. Right. There's a lot of negativity out there. And so yeah, when people look at my page, they'll see that I'm creating reels and posts that, really try to uplift people and give people practical tools and tips on how to regulate their stress, their anger, and some of their anxiety as well. So that's the mission of at Dr. Manning-Gibbs.
I love it. And I mean, that's really, that's one of the best ways to reach them is through social media. Do you think that there is any other good or productive way to initiate that mental health conversation with somebody younger because they might not know how to bring up what they're struggling with? What's the best way to initiate that conversation?
So as far as like an adult initiating the conversation with them
Yeah,
or
like if you're an adult and you can see that they're struggling, because I think
Mhm.
most adults would probably recognize, like, okay, they're having a tough time. How would you go about
Yeah.
doing that?
Well, it's interesting. A few months ago, I gave this sort of advice to a teenager that came to me and they said, hey, my friend is dealing with a really bad breakup, and they've already
Mm,
communicated at other times that they're not open to therapy right now. And I was like, okay, that's all good. Let's meet them where they are. And one of the things is I went online and I looked up mental health accounts and I tried to find posts that could give them some advice on how they can deal with their stress, the breakup. And they actually gave the person that communicated this to me some positive feedback, like, oh, that's really cool. Like, this is one great account of this guy out in California, and he's just very young and, he's relatable, and he just found it very interesting. So you kind of have to sometimes meet this generation where they are. Another thing I would say, it depends on what's coming up for them, how severe their symptoms are, right? So if they're not functioning, if they're just isolating, withdrawing, not going to school or going to work, you might want to say, hey, why don't you look at talkspace.com or betterhelp.com, which are two great online platforms that can provide them with the resource that they need, which is a mental health professional. So I would just say try to funnel them information that they can relate to, be it TikTok or Instagram, or just provide them with, information on one of these online platforms that can connect them to a mental health professional.
Perfect. So there's more resources than we think they are. I think that's one of the biggest struggles is we don't always know where to go, but you just gave us some great examples.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And when I was taking a look at your website and browsing, I noticed one word pop up a lot, and that word was compassion. What makes compassion such a key part of mental health treatment?
I love the Muhammad Ali quote. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm.
Right? I'm sorry, I messed it up. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think I said it right the first time, right?
I got you.
You
Yeah.
got it right. I thought I said it wrong, but no, I think that you can have all the credentials in the world, right? You could be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't have compassion and if you can't sympathize with people, if you can't extend people grace, not judge them, then you're not going to get through to them. So it's vitally important, especially as a mental health professional, to make sure that I prioritize being compassionate, being understanding, so that people feel comfortable opening up and sharing their story. If I don't have if a person's uncomfortable sharing their story with me, how can I really help them to overcome their challenges?
Yeah, it starts with conversation. Absolutely. What's one thing that you wish the general public knew about mental health and mental health treatment that you think maybe they don't know?
Think that we're still in this day and age dealing with the stigma of thinking that mental health treatment is just for quote unquote crazy people, right? People who are dealing with things such as psychosis or schizophrenia. No, mental health treatment is for everybody. It can be for everybody. It's not just for people who are dealing with more severe acute chronic conditions.
Yeah. And what's next for you? What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward just to continuing to share the information that I have been on social media. I'm just getting into the world of TikTok. And so I'm looking forward not only to sharing my stress management techniques on Instagram, but also on TikTok as well.
Cool. So if anybody wants to take a look at those, get some good vibes, get some ideas, get some tips to maybe share or try yourself, go follow you anywhere and everywhere really on social media. You're pretty much everywhere, right?
I am. I'm primarily on Instagram and again, TikTok, dibble and dabble in Facebook from time to time, but they definitely could check me out on TikTok and Instagram.
Great. Dr. Manning-Gibbs, thank you so much for your insight. Thank you for your words. Thank you for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Val. It's been a pleasure.